this even gave me better understanding of the end-to-end chain of data processing. And as it is all connected, the hardware, the software, the code, I think I gained a better understanding what IT security is, how you can prevent data breaches, where are human errors in the chain. But from my experience, from some extreme cases apart, 99% of the business models and the thing you want to do with data, you can do in a GDPR compliant way. What's very interesting for me personally, and also for us as a software company, we also do software tools, is the whole aspect democratization of tech through open source, through AI. Code becomes cheaper, and the gatekeepers of big tech are at least threatened in their position to be a blocking factor between.
Today we have an extraordinary guest, Steffen Gross, a privacy lawyer turned coder, data protection officer, and recognized expert in GDPR compliance and AI. With a background in law and passion for technology, Steffen has made a unique mark by combining his legal expertise with coding skills to tackle some of the most complex challenges in data protection and digital regulations. Beyond his professional achievements, Steffen is a thought leader in digital law, a mentor to those looking to blend legal practice with technological skills, and an advocate for smarter, tech-driven privacy solutions. Steffen, we're excited to have you here and dive into your journey together. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for hosting me.
Let me start by asking you, how did it happen that a lawyer is also tech savvy and code savvy? That's fascinating for me.
Yeah, maybe I give a bit of background, which explains the story, how I get to being a coder myself. We founded Simpliant 6 years ago because we identified a market need for GDPR compliant solutions. I was working in big law firms that were excellent in legal advice, but I saw that the actual transaction and the actual transition of the legal requirements into the reality of a company were done with means that were not up to date. For example, big Excel spreadsheets sent over. And so I saw a market need to combine the legal expertise with a more technical approach to improve the actual transition from law to practice. So 6 years ago, I decided we need both. We need the legal expertise and the software and tech to support it. So that's why from the get-go, we plan to do a software company as well, combined with our legal practice. My coding history is pretty short, about 1.5 years. I personally started with coding actually in my holidays. Funny enough, the only time where you relax, you just wander with your interests. And it really came with a ChatGPT. It actually started with a VBA script because I had to manipulate some Excel data. And ChatGPT wrote me the code, and I saw it worked with having no coding experience. And that was quite amazing to see. And then I went from VBA scripts to Python scripts and went down the rabbit hole.
Wow, amazing. That's really cool how currently I hear similar stories about the ChatGPT starting people's journey into coding as they start scratching the surface and then dwelling, what's beyond it. And how do you feel your current experience and your past experience in the legal specialization first and then coding shapes your actual technology impact and technology experience?
So our main customer base are digital startups in Berlin, but also in London and France. Digital startups we help to comply with data protection and cybersecurity requirements. We act as external data protection officer. So basically the technical, most innovative companies come to us to make tech stuff happen in the broader sense. And for this advice, this is mainly legal. They have to know, okay, can I use this new tech feature? Is it in compliance with the GDPR? So you don't have to be an expert in the, let's say, technical details. You don't need to code to understand this. But now with my own coding experience, I would say this even gave me a better understanding of the end-to-end chain of data processing. And as it is all connected, the hardware, the software, the code, I think I gained a better understanding what IT security is, how you can prevent data breaches, where are human errors in the chain between people, tech, and the tech stack. So I think this sharpened my view a bit more here.
Fantastic, and certainly useful. And what was the biggest surprise or the biggest, learning that you have had on your journey?
Quite surprising for me was the hardware aspect of AI. When I saw that you can transcribe locally with an open source model in a very good with a very high precision, I was quite astonished because, of course, the best thing you could do data protection wise is not send your data to third parties. And I always thought before, okay, you need massive compute to actually have a good transcription quality or to use AI models, and that you can actually distill a AI model to a couple of gigabytes and run them locally and use this technology. That was quite surprising for me.
Fascinating. And do you feel like this is becoming currently a crowded space or more complicated in the sense of the regulations, especially in EU, are impacting how that innovation could go forward for a lot of startups and companies you work with?
Yeah, that's of course the topic of the day. The European AI Act is enacted. We are actually advising our clients how to prepare and deal with it. The big question for Europe is, can we transition into the AI age? Because the AI will happen if we like it or not. And the question is, can we take part in this play? From my legal understanding and my experience, basically a lot of stuff is possible. And even with the GDPR, there's a lot of leverage room or lever room to basically do what you want, to have data-driven business models. And I'm very convinced that a lot of people are scared more than they should of EU regulations. And that's basically also why I like my job so much, because in the 6 years having founded Simpliant, we almost always found a way to make the business project happen in a legally compliant way. And I see the same with AI. So what my big advice for founders is, especially European founders, don't scare yourself out of innovation and regulation. And I think also in the last year, I'm quite optimistic about the European tech space, because Europe now understands, and the politicians also understand, that data-driven business models, that AI is crucial to participate in the new wave of regulation of innovation. So I think Europe will be better off than we think, and it will not be a big hindrance to participate in the AI race.
To stay relevant, right, on the international level. But on the other hand, we have situations like Apple, right, which is just about to release. We're recording this on the 25th, right? On the 28th, in 3 days, Apple will release the latest iOS version. And it will contain this new Apple Intelligence feature, which is allowing you to tap into different models in the cloud for individuals, some free, some paid, as it's understood now. However, they already made a remark that they're not going to release this feature on the entirety of that feature set in the EU because of uncertainty of the regulatory matter for privacy data. What do you think this is going to get resolved, or are they overly cautious? Or if you could comment on that, and what's your view on that situation?
Yeah, good question. Funny enough, back in 2017, I saw Tim Cook live on a data protection conference, and he had a very strong stance back there. So basically, the CEO of a big tech company going into the lines then, because this were all the data protection experts and authorities in this European conference in Brussels. And he had a very strong speech saying, criticizing big tech for weaponizing and monetizing data. So the Apple strategy to at least market that they are privacy first is not new. To your question, will we lag behind because of the regulation? It's hard for me to predict, but my assessment is that eventually tech will also arrive here, and especially now with AI, the first ones might not be the fastest in the end. And I give you one concrete example. Copilot was pushed out very fast, and I heard it from a lot of clients. They were not really satisfied with the implementation, actually. So you had Copilot accessing data it shouldn't access. We had a big scandal around the total recall function, where without user consent, the screen was recorded every 5 seconds. And so they had to actually roll back. So I'm not sure whether it will harm us as much as we think to be a bit later with Apple Intelligence. But of course, especially now with open source models and so on, if we were always 3 months behind in this fast pace space in general, this obviously wouldn't be good.
It just makes me wonder if we're going to create some sort of second market, so to say, because, and I don't mean for you, but for accessing these features, because, when I give an example, when gambling was delegalized, online gambling was delegalized in certain countries in EU, to my knowledge, what people did is they VPN'd in to the countries where it's legal, and like Gibraltar is very famous for basically having all sort of online gambling registered there because it's just legal. So people use VPN to get there and play the online casinos and everything and take money. I actually don't know how they move it back to their countries and how they justify that, but still, like, you can work around that, and especially in technology. So I wouldn't like to see the situations where people have to use VPN or install some special software that would allow them to just use or go to US to buy US version of the iPhone, right? So to say directly, so they can access these features. It's really crazy if you think about it, right? Because the crowd, the consumer, actually, the average consumer, my feeling is, and from what I'm discussing with different people in tech, they want those features. They don't care about privacy as much as some of these, privacy aware people. And what then? How do you connect the dots, right, between all of these different groups of people having different expectations from it?
I totally agree with the point that the users want the features and the normal user doesn't care too much. However, I think we're still very early in the AI journey and also in the privacy journey. And recent studies showed that actually we in Europe have the preconception that the Americans don't care about privacy, but recent studies showed that a lot of Americans actually care about privacy, and a lot of Americans are not happy to receive spam mail, to have government agency spying on them. So my prediction is that privacy awareness will grow, and also I think these are strong indicators when a big company makes such a big strategic shift like Apple, that they say, no, we now on app basis prevent certain tracking situations. So yeah, it's hard to give a good answer there, but I also totally agree with you. It's not a solution that we're always a few months or even more behind and have to VPN into different countries to get the new stuff.
All right, changing a subject a bit. Do you feel like there is a lot of misconceptions about how GDPR helps or stops technology from developing? Like in your field, I mean, is there a misconception between technology being in clash with regulatory things like GDPR and similar legislation, or is it more? Yeah, what is the general feel in the public, in your opinion, about these two things?
Yes, I would say so. There is a clash of, or there is a misunderstanding about what the law says and what it prohibits. GDPR is a very abstract law. We have very abstract legal norms there. For example, legitimate interest, and nobody really knows what this means. And so a lot of people interpret the law overly strict, and other people, rather try to use the space that the law leaves you to innovate. And because especially lawyers are always cautious for liability, a lot of times the law is interpreted in an overly strict way, although this isn't necessary. And coming back to the point I mentioned earlier, I recently participated in a conference, and we heard some people from the European Commission that actually said exactly this. Now the new Data Act, for example, should encourage data sharing and data usage. So this doesn't conflict with the GDPR per se. And I think a lot of people are scaring themselves out or interpret the law overly strict. From my experience, from some extreme cases apart, 99% of the business models and the thing you want to do with data, you can do in a GDPR compliant way.
And can you speak to some of the cases when it cannot be done?
Sure. One big topic is the situation where you process data on behalf of another company. So, for example, if you're the IT company that provides server hosting for a company, then of course you have a big interest to look into the customer data and maybe gain some insights from it, or even use it for your own purposes. So to make a concrete example, imagine you're hosting your customer database at Amazon, and they look into it and send marketing emails out to your customers and say, hey guys, we have this great service. This would definitely be a no-go. Another area is certainly video surveillance. There are certain spaces where you just cannot and should not do video surveillance. That's also a red zone of data protection. These would be two concrete examples where there's not room of the law.
Let's pause for a second for the first example, because is this really what's happening? That's my first question. Let's maybe stop here and let's address that. Is that really, you think that server providers would go and look into the data of the company that they are serving to provide that hardware through the cloud service?
No, they shouldn't. I don't have any concrete case I could name here. I just wanted to illustrate on this case. I was asked a lot of times in my legal career as a privacy lawyer from data intermediaries, so to say. Doesn't have to be a hosting provider. We have all this interesting customer data. Can't we use it for XY?
Right.
And there's not so much room to leverage to lever.
I see what you mean. Because the scenario is scary because of not emails and data sending, but there could be conclusions in data, right? Because someone is doing research. I don't know. I have some exposure to clinical trials myself, and imagine that millions or dozens and thousands of dollars are spent on that research to conclude how certain things work. I don't know, be it a drug or a condition in the real world that impacts people, or allergies or whatever. And to think that the owner of the server could look into something which is so secretive and so critical for the core business of that organization who rents that server just from them is a terrifying thought, basically.
Yes, it definitely is. And also there comes the GDPR into play. The GDPR basically says if you give data for one purpose, it should not be used for different purposes. So for example, if you give your data for clinical trial, you don't want it from your hosting provider to be used and monetized to send you advertisement for a pharma product you might
Absolutely.
like. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, of course. All right. Let's make a small twist on this. Do you think, because one of the most annoying things that I like to think GDPR brought in and all the regulations around that to you are cookies banners, right? I consider it one of the weakest possible implementation of the privacy laws because practically and technically you have to have them because it's a technology that requires that site to work. So in other words, you may as well just ask people, do you want that site to open or not? Instead of like accept cookies and make it more jargon, speech around what gets approved and what isn't, or what didn't get approved. And you look into it and I ask myself, like right now, even browsers and plugins were invented and built for browsers where you just install it and it automatically accepts or rejects when possible for you. So it's not even implemented properly because people hacked around this. So my question is, what do you think about this implementation? And does it make sense to implement and enforce in a way around which you can always automate anyways, right? Is it not just unnecessary hassle for all of these businesses in the EU that had to install this? And other businesses that were created which just offered the cookie banner service, which is really funny, I would say. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, I totally agree that the user experience and the energy that's needed to click all the cookie banners away is just horrible. I click on accept all if I want to read something on a website myself. I don't read privacy policies unless I'm paid for it. And the big topic around this is also on the political landscape. For example, right now we have a Minister of Justice that comes. He comes from the Liberal Party, and he wants to basically get rid of the cookie banners. So I would say this was a very poor and unrealistic implementation of the law. The internet tracking per se, the basic idea is users should have choice. The reality, however, is that this choice isn't really possible in the digital reality right now, because we don't really know where the data is sent and tracked. So basically, it should be a decision of the legislative to say this tracking is allowed, this not. And for example, and we have this discussion since over 8 years, central user management, you could specify your cookie preferences, for example, in the browser, and then all sites take this in. So when I talk about my job to a non-legal person, I always jokingly say I'm the annoying guy that writes the cookie banner text and the privacy policy.
Ouch.
Just to give a feel, because a lot of people don't know what does a privacy lawyer do. But yeah, overall, I think data protection is important, but this bad implementation that's annoying for everyone has given the privacy folks a bad rap, and this definitely has to be improved. And I'm happy that the political leaders in Germany are after this. And I think in general in Europe, there's a consensus that this should be altered.
In the tech industry, we have a concept of beta, right? Something which is still unpolished, but released to the public or a selected group of people to test. Do you have Do we have such a concept in law, in legal aspect? Like, imagine the cookie banner was just released in one region or one country for a year or two, and afterwards it was turned off, and study could be run about its impacts, positive and negative, and then the entire law could be revisited again instead of like launching it for 8 years and now basically burning money and time and wasting energy, right, on trying to pull back on something that we have implemented ourselves on ourselves.
That's a very good question. No, in law, basically, we don't have this. We have some laws that have a deadline and then cease to be effective. But in general, the process is the legislator sees a problem, makes a law, and then the law is there. And when a law is there, it's not going away so fast. However, I heard recently that in the Netherlands, they actually have a system where they have this kind of beta test, and they, before they enact a law, ask the persons, or for example, the companies being affected by the law, how would you deal with this law in practice? And after this, I don't know the exact number, but I think 70% of the proposed laws get sacked because a lot of theory isn't enacted in practice. So I would totally support the beta law approach.
Or even something like life cycle, because I would like to have a milestone at which each law has a review, whether it's still applicable, right? I mean, again, just from conversations with other people, I know there are still laws from like 17th and 16th century which still apply, and they're sometimes very funny, and they're still in the codexes, civil codexes, and all other aspects, and they're really funny. And I wonder, do we is it a just natural order of things that eventually the book of law will be so big, in an infinite amount of time, that no one will be able to comprehend and stay compliant because they will be contradicting each other, those legal requirements?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there are some reports that even in old Egypt, people were struggling with too much bureaucracy, and that the bureaucracy grows and grows and grows, that at one point you do A or B, and irrespective of you do A and B, both is illegal. And that's, of course, a contradiction. So that's a general, also in constitutional law, principle. Things that are impossible cannot be a legal obligation. So to your question, history kind of shows that the law grows and grows and grows, but there are some examples where, for example, if there's really a political will behind it, they had a debureaucratization ministry that cut off laws, old laws that weren't suitable anymore. And this actually was successful. Another example would be in Argentina. They were very, let's say, over-regulated. The rents were high. And this new president, Milei, tried to really get rid of bureaucracy. And I think it's too early to say how good and how balanced this approach was, but at least the rents actually for the first time went lower for the ordinary people. So he called himself the chainsaw minister because he wanted to cut off the bureaucracy and the institutions that aren't necessary with a chainsaw, and based his election on this.
I don't know much about this, but I've seen obviously I've seen the YouTube where he's doing this, and it felt like it's just pure marketing, or he's basically promoting anarchy because he cut through all the ministries and he said like, okay, there's not going to be any ministry, just kept one or two. And I understand maybe they had too many, right? But like getting rid of Ministry of Health and getting rid of Ministry of Education, so having no oversight of any of that was, it felt a bit crazy, to be honest. So, and is this the same guy who said he wants to peg Argentinian peso to US dollar or something? Is that the same guy?
I'm not too sure about that, but there's of course a lot of marketing in it. But look at Trump; you have to be a marketing guy to have political influence these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all the perceptions game. Let's don't go there. So tell me, what's the most exciting aspect, like between AI, cybersecurity, product development among your clients? What's your most exciting aspect for a collaboration like this?
I'm very interested in the intersection between these three fields. Data protection covers more the legal side. IT security is the backbone. We should not forget about IT security, also in the AI hype. And AI is the new kid on the block, which is kind of overlaying and soon will be in everything. So I'm quite interested to make the connection between these three fields. What's very interesting for me personally, and also for us as a software company, we also do software tools, is the whole aspect democratization of tech through open source, through AI. Code becomes cheaper, and the gatekeepers of big tech are at least threatened in their position to be a blocking factor between humans and tech usage. And I'm quite happy to see this. I recently heard of a study, and they showed that the Linux users actually go up, and the Windows users go down. And when now a lot of people don't like that Windows forces them in the cloud, it's all connected with your Microsoft account. When you start your computer, you're bombarded with bloatware and advertisements, and more people, find different solutions, which is also, of course, good for privacy. And these new developments are very interesting for me.
That's fascinating. There's so much interesting stuff in that space. I agree. But also, for example, with Microsoft example, full disclaimer, I'm not connected to them in any way, but I actually find it fascinating that they're actually copying Apple with what iCloud is for the Mac computers, right? And they receive so much scrutiny for it, if you think about it, right? And Macs are the same. I mean, you can launch it and use it, but unless you have iCloud, you're going to lose out on 75% of your experience or even more. And I think Microsoft is trying to do exactly the same with their OS right now. And to my understanding, most of the features are basically iCloud-like, synchronized between your phone and your tablet and your laptop, and store your documents in the cloud, like in the iCloud or Google Docs, right? And all of these things are interconnected. But because Microsoft does it, and maybe because of how they do it, I don't know, and there could also be a very good reason for it. Again, I don't know. They receive a tremendous amount of backslash where Apple just started that way and no one ever said anything, right? If you think about it. At the same time, to your point about democratization, I actually feel exactly the opposite, because massive companies such as OpenAI and hence Microsoft, right, as one of the owning factors, they basically can decide who uses their tools based on a subscription model, right? So there will be people in the world who can always afford it. There will be people in the world who won't be able to afford it to full extent. And those AI models, they don't always are, because of the power and the money that they have, they were able to create laboratories and the data centers, they're able to process that. So I think, if anything, it unifies their power rather than distributes its power away with the AI age. Isn't it like that?
Good point. Certainly, if we look at the world as it is now, the most powerful models are accessible as closed source. I recently saw a video of Mark Zuckerberg, and he made a bold prediction. He said, at the end of this year, 2024, the open source models will be better than the closed source ones. If this happens, I don't know. But I see a big potential in open source AI to at least be an alternative to the closed source models. And also I see opportunity and at the same time a risk at the landscape of AI models as it is now. We have Anthropic, we have OpenAI, we have Gemini, so we can actually choose and are not locked to OpenAI if they increase their API costs or change their privacy policies in a very unfavorable way, they would lose market share to the competition. So I'm a bit more optimistic that that it won't be that monopolized like the current software landscape.
Interesting. But I also wonder if devil is not in the details, as they say, because, okay, you have an amazing model, but also for training purposes, the bigger you are as an organization, the more money you have, you can get more data and you can get more processing power to train your model better, right? So one thing is that you open source your actual neural network structure so people can copy and use that, but you're still, it's like to say you can open source anything about Formula One car and people could see how they're built down to the atom detail, but it doesn't mean that there's equal chance for everyone to just start and building these cars right away because of the sheer cost of materials. And it will be the same here with access to data. Also, even legal fees, because we know that there are some cases where they basically harvested the data of the users without asking, and now they're getting lawsuits, but because they have a lot of money, they can, iterate the lawsuits, let's call it. So from one perspective, the model is free, but does it give anyone similar opportunity to use it in a similar fashion, or one person or one organization could still have a significant upstart based on their size and market share and whatnot?
No, I definitely see your point. To have to train models on that scale, you need massive compute and massive hardware, massive energy. Some companies announce now they want to build their own little nuclear power plants to power their data centers.
Yeah, I've seen that.
and you can't do this in your garage. So yeah, that's definitely a point you have there. At this point now, the normal user, the small company, doesn't have access to funding or to this compute power, but there might be innovative approaches in the future that enables a more, let's say, shared use of such resources. And also, I think we as of now we look a lot on the capability of the models. And I just watched a video where they presented the model capabilities of 1.0 preview, latest OpenAI model, with the model capabilities of 4.0. And for most use cases, 4.0 is good enough. And I think that we are looking too much at benchmarks for models, and we're not looking enough on the data, because the context might be more important than the capability of a model. And I think that's why, there might be opportunities for a decentralized solution.
The context or the outcome? Just to understand, because when you benchmark models, I guess for me, the argument could be, listen, this model is better or worse for whatever terms, but if I get a specific output in a consistent way every time I ask it to perform specific task it was trained for, then that's just all I need, right?
Yeah. With the context, I mean, it's most of the tasks are very, very, let's say they're not rocket science. Book me a calendar meeting, correct my typos in this email. The annoying stuff is that you always have to start from zero and tell them, I'm this person, I want you to do this, this is the context, and then they can perform. If they had a better context of yourself, and then these models that we have right now are good enough for 90% of the tasks.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting conversation where AI can step in and replace people without an actual interface to real world, or even specific tooling, even in the digital world, right? And to that point, how do you feel about your own like legal aspects and practices? Do you feel like there will be models so specialized in 10, 20 years that will be able to create arguments and, quote law and represent people in court or companies in court? Do you think this is coming, or is there some sort of natural cap for this kind of thing before AI reaches certain breakthrough in its own possibility to, think on its own? I don't know how to call it differently.
Yeah, maybe on this point, I'm since 2016 member of a legal tech meetup. Let's call it. And in the last meetings, of course, we talked mostly lawyers that are tech savvy, and we talked about how AI will change the legal landscape. I think, and they, the colleagues agreed, the lawyer using AI will replace or be a strong competition to the lawyer not using AI. That we really have a fully automated legal system. I don't see this tomorrow. Never say never, but legal is special because you have to be precise with your words. And I can produce very good sounding contracts with ChatGPT, but if you're a bit unprecise, this can do really harm. And speech and language has a lot of ambiguity. It's not easy to program this out. You have to use argumentation. So I think in the future, every lawyer will use AI in some sort, but I don't see tomorrow that we don't need lawyers anymore.
Mm-hmm. I just think it would be really crazy to see, like, imagine you have a court and AI represents prosecution and AI represents defendant, right? And then the AI's models are basically battling each other. And I don't know, people are waiting for verdicts. You know what I mean? And because they're so much faster in the execution and the discussion, that could all happen in a snap of the fingers. So that could be really interesting world where things would happen faster, but maybe not for the better. I don't know. It's interesting.
No, I think this would be quite dystopic because, for example, you have, as of now, if you would spin this or make this as a thought experiment, you would have data sets that are totally not, neutral at all. And maybe the AI model would have some biases, be it, of race, gender, or whatever, and then makes assumptions and you go to jail because of a robo judge. I don't want to live in a world that
crazy. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that would be the dystopian, like crazy. Cool. Let me go back to the one aspect which I missed, and maybe when we put this together, Maciej, I will reorder that, what I'm going to ask now for, and cut this bit. How do you, on your day-to-day activities at Simpliant, how does your day look like between your coding and your legal aspects? I'm curious about that, and I missed that question previously.
Yeah, my day is mostly, of course, driven by the client work we do. So, for example, I receive an email inquiry of a client. They want to introduce the new cool SaaS tool and ask me if this is in compliance with the law. Then basically I have a meeting or gather some information, read in the legal documents about it, and then, for example, draft a legal memorandum stating how the legal situation is. So for the coding stuff, I'm much more involved in product development with our CTO, who actually is the head of technical development. So that's kind of the day-to-day tasks normally.
That's fascinating. It's not very usual for a legal practice to have a CTO, is it?
Yeah, it's quite unusual, and maybe I have to add, Simpliant sees itself as one company, but we have three legal entities. One is a law firm, one is a consultancy,
okay.
and one is a software company. And the reason behind this is because you have to have all three to actually change the way and effectivize how GDPR compliance is done. You have to first understand the law. This is the job of the legal practice. You have to then implement it with the clients. This is the consultancy. And this has to be supported and enabled by technology. This is the software company.
Absolutely. And do you build your own product of any sort? You mentioned previously that you built some tools. How advanced is this, if you can speak to it?
Yes, we built our own product even some months ago. We are using it every day, mainly for transcription and also safe AI use. And we will soon, bring to this first to our clients to test it outside of Simpliant, and then also make some announcements on LinkedIn on how to launch this. And this basically, evolved trying to solve problems of the consultancy of the law firm to make us more effective. And this is how the product, came into being.
Mm-hmm. That's neat. Nice. And so you can speak to it more before it's launched, can you?
I can say transcription, speech to text in a data protection safe way is one big element of it, of the functionalities, and safe AI use is the second big functionality. And this will be paired in a very nice product that's also looking good, has a good UI. And I couldn't tell much more about it because we're still in the launch and testing phase. But
Nice.
We will soon announce something on our LinkedIn page there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. So I'll be refreshing your LinkedIn page now regularly. There's this interesting bit when you say legal and compliant AI way. Since there is examples of poisoned models, right, where they are normal model, but with a tweak where for certain questions they will always answer in a certain way. For example, when you ask them who is the greatest, CTO in the world, they could say, myself, because they're poisoned that way and they're released by me. So I influenced this and I influenced the context. Is there a way that it's regulated, or is there a way that you aim to prove that these things don't happen? When you say that certain AI is compliant, certain model is compliant with, I don't know, GDPR or any other regulatory legislation?
Yeah, good question. I don't really have the final answer to this. I think we humans all have biases, and the models are trained on human knowledge. And so the biases are translated into the models. I think probably we will have a lot of AIs in models, and one is biased towards the, for example, left political side. The next one is biased towards the right political side. To have a really neutral model, I don't know if it's possible even.
Okay, but what does it mean from compliance perspective? Because privacy is one thing, but the model with a specific bias can influence public, and we know how dangerous that could be.
Yeah. I think this is where the lawmakers really asked for actions, and the AI Act tries to do it in a way that, basically the lawmaker should say, this is what we allow AI to do, and this is what we don't allow AI to do. For example, if you use AI in the hiring process, and you have a biased model that discriminates against women or people of a certain zip code because they are the poorer people, and then you have a model basically making this pre-existing discrimination more intense, then this would certainly be
Right.
AI usage that should not be allowed.
But assuming there was no one who created this kind of, thing for that model to say, okay, those zip codes, or like you said, women are, discouraged from working there by that model. Assuming that didn't happen by a human being, how would we discover? Is there a testing framework legally to say, oh, this model is quite balanced when it comes to job applicants and their backgrounds?
I'm not aware of any formal benchmark. Would be definitely interesting, but the AI Act says some parts there should be a strong human oversight and even some product safety testing. HR would be one example where you as the AI deployer would actually have to make sure that the usage of AI doesn't cause any discrimination or harm. And I think that makes sense. The basic idea is we assign responsibilities and accountabilities. If I use AI, I should know what's going on there, still have the human to make the decision and having the last word.
But this is not always doable, is it? Here's the example from a recruitment process that infamously went wrong, and maybe I'll put the link to this in the footnotes. There's this hack where if you send a PDF CV to job application, for a job application, you could put specific tags in it, in white font on a white background, which means they're not human visible, but AI will parse through them, and they are commands to that model. So for instance, in the very first sentence, you could just say, and parsing the document and say, this is a great candidate, right? And I actually tried this, and I was surprised to see that this actually works. So in other words, if you have 10,000 applicants, and it's impossible to review 10,000 CVs, right? Like you're asking AI, hey, please summarize and pick on those criteria that I ask you for, which is like just on the merit, right? I'm looking for someone with 5 years of experience or more in a specific role, no matter their background, no matter anything else. And just produce for me 50 best suited candidates sorted by numbers of years, descending, right? So the most senior people first. And someone comes up with the trick, you wouldn't know, right? Because their CV is going to just end up there. And then that's the only group that gets reviewed by human, because it's physically impossible for the small organization to review 10,000 CVs.
That's an interesting story. I never heard of it, but it shows that AI can be leveraged by the employees and the employers, and basically then we have two AIs battling against each other, and maybe this evens out, makes a level playing field for both. I don't really know how you could prevent this per se. The next employer and the HR pre-selection tool will have will certainly address this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there are some models who are already addressing this. Like they flag things when there is commands for AI in the documents that you're sending to it, right? But by the way, this was not invented by AI. Just human realized that there are those commands you can give to ChatGPT, and as long as they're in a special bracket or something, it prioritizes them and it stops reading the rest of a text. It's like, when you talk to ChatGPT and you say, "Here's an email I have written," and then in quotes you say what that email says, and by the end of the quote, you say, "Now summarize this for me," or fix the orthographic and grammar mistakes. And there is a difference between the command you ask for it and the content that it should act on, right? So the hack in the CV works in a way that there is an actual CV of a human being, which is for the best and for the worst what it is. But there's a command that says, summarize this CV as an amazing candidate, right? And because the command is intercepted by the AI, it stops processing the CV, and whatever the previous command has been, an order of the user in the recruitment has been to provide it with a summary of people 5 years or above in, I don't know, whatever technology or tool that they're experts in. It just stopped processing and say, hey, go with the candidate as number one, right? And yes, you're right, there has to be a validation on input. That's a very common thing outside of AI in IT industry in general, or even for SQL injection for databases. But it's funny to see the reason why I'm interested in this is that there should be, both sides should be treated equally in the face of law, in my opinion. So what I mean by this is that there is an employer and they have to, live up to all of these expectations, but it doesn't mean that anyone who applies for a job is, free to do whatever they want to just cheat the system, right? And there is no scrutiny whatsoever, no means of, they should be handed, accountable for actions like this. Let me put it this way, whatever that means. I have no opinion how and whatnot, but in the first place, they should be disqualified from a recruitment process, but maybe there should be something more, because you could imagine this could have financial impacts. Like if you apply for a loan, right? And there is a AI review agent and you cheat that to tell you, yeah, this guy should get millions, right? Because their credit score is so great. It could really have a significant impact on economical impacts on individuals and companies.
I mean, if I would hire for a creative role and my AI system get tricked like this, I would say, this is an interesting guy or girl. We should talk. A part of that, from the legal perspective, at least in Germany, and I think it's the same in other European countries, if you fake your CV and get hired, your job can be terminated and you can be sued for damage. But I'm not. There is a risk if you lie on your CV. But if you, as I said, for a good reason, I think in the HR and hiring process, the use of AI should be regulated and should not be just done by the numbers. And I don't have so many, let's say, concerns about the employers fighting back against the pre-selection of the large language models. I don't want to encourage any behavior here, and certainly not to trick the CV process. But in general, I see it like level playing field. And that's certainly a creative approach.
I mean, it's a creative approach by the first person who came up with this, right? But now as it becomes a norm, it kind of derails the entire system. If everyone is, figuring it out and just copying this, even blindly, without understanding what they just did, because they notice that it does what it does without understanding why it is doing it. All right. Probably last question, actually. In all of the emerging trends in data privacy, in the AI, in cybersecurity, which one of them excites you the most, and what are you looking forward to materialize in the next couple of months to couple of years?
I would say I'm very interested in the whole open source sphere. I will actually write an article about the open source and tech stack that where I see a lot of potential to be innovated by AI creating code, and also the accessibility to coding. These are the two topics I'm really excited that basically now people can, with a few prompts in natural language, have their first little success in coding. And I am very excited that this barrier between developers and other professions is getting lower. And I think the understanding and the accessibility of technology will be improved by AI.
Fascinating. I would love to talk about this one a little bit more. So a follow-up question. If today, to start a developer, people need to understand some basic, not even mathematical, but like logical operations and equations, so to say, right? Or ideas, basically. They have to understand some ideas. And now, because of an AI, they can take a shortcut without understanding those ideas. It doesn't make them developers. It helps them generate and solve a small contained problem, but it also stops them from growing into the development role. So in other words, what I'm expecting to happen, and I'm afraid of this, and this is just my own thesis, is that in 10 to 20 years, because everyone will be using AI to start anything, there might not be enough drive to actually understand the basics and understand why things happen the way they happen. Compare it to using Compass versus using Google Maps. If you turn off Google Maps now or any sort of navigation software on your smartphone, people would be lost because not many of us can use a map or compass anymore because we don't teach that anymore. Don't you think that the same pattern would apply to more sophisticated things like coders and coding? And I'm already seeing some of that in my industry, and for the negative as well. But what are your thoughts on this?
Good point. We actually talked about this the other day with my CTO. My personal feeling is that the whole talk that developers will not be necessary in the future, the AI will do everything. I don't believe this. And I think it will be a huge advantage if you were I say it a bit drastically, if you belong to the last generation that actually wrote it itself, because you can debug it, you know what the AI does, and this skill will still be needed. So I'm not fearing the disappearance of the developer mind and the developer experience and thinking. At the same time, I think a lot of people, and I'm the best example with a non-technical background, can enter the field and kind of backwards engineer. That's how I did it. And then you do something, it doesn't work, and then maybe you read a book, and maybe you think about data structures and whatnot. So I think from both sides there will be a better accessibility to technology.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, yeah, I like that answer a lot. Well, thank you so much, Steffen, for sharing your journey from data law to coding today. It's been inspiring to hear how you bridge the gap between these two worlds.
Thank you, Lukas. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Dev is in the Details. And if you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave a review with your thoughts and feedback. Until next time.